Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So now we move to chapter 14. So the topic discussions for today is conflict and negotiation. Before we go further, this is the learning objective for this chapter. So today we will describe about the three types of conflict and the three loci of conflict, outline the conflict process, contrast distributive and integrative bargaining, applies 5 steps of negotiation process. We will show on how individual differences may influence the elements of negotiation. We also describe the social factors that may influence negotiation, and we also assess the roles and functions of third-party negotiation. Then we move to define what is conflict. Okay, so conflict is the process when they start to begin, they have one party perceive that another party have negatively affected or about to negatively affect something that the first party cares about. So basically, currently, people experience a wide range of conflict. For example, in organization, for example, they may exist of conflict when they have incompatibility of goals, they have difference in interpretations of facts, idea, or because of disagreement over behavioral expectations and something that they don't like to. Then, further understanding, you need to know that contemporary perspective, they try to classify conflict based on its own effect. So, they have two types of conflict, which are functional conflict and also dysfunctional conflict. So, functional conflict refers to the conflict that support the goals of the group and try to improve the performance. Then dysfunctional conflict refers to the conflict that hinder group performance. So a highly personal struggle for control that distract from the task at in hand in a team is actually referred to dysfunctional conflict. So basically, in order to understand what are the conflict, first we need to identify the types of disagreement or what the conflict is all about. So whether this agreement is actually about the goals that they want to achieve or it's about people who just rub one another the wrong way. Okay, so this is all about the best way to get things done, or the each conflict is basically unique, so that researchers have classified conflict into 3 categories which reflect the relationship, task, or process. So the units of the conflict and also the units of performance can be described through the figure below. Okay, so you can see there are the situation A, B, and C. So what are the levels of conflict that exist? So what types of conflict? And then internal characteristic, you can see whether self-critical, innovative, disruptive, chaotic, or uncooperative. So unit performance outcome, whether it's low or high, then you can see the curve there. So to identify the levels of conflict that exist within the situation. So this is the types of conflict that I said earlier. So they have relationship conflict, more on interpersonal relationship, task conflict, which is reflect to the work content and also the goals that you want to achieve within your work area, or the process conflict on how the work is done. Okay, so this is the conflict that always exists within the organization. Other than identify the types of conflict, they have another way for us to understand conflict, and what we want to consider is actually its locus or the framework within the conflict may occur. So they have 3 types or 3 basic types of conflict, which are dyadic conflict. It refers to the conflict between two people, intra-group conflict that occur within group or team, or last one, intergroup conflict, when the conflict happen between group or team members. Okay, so what about the conflict process? So basically, they have 5 stages to understand the conflict process. So we go one by one: potential oppositions or incompatibility, cognitions and personalization, intention, behavior, and the last one will be outcome. So you can see throughout the figure that have been shown within the slide itself. So we move to chapter 1, the stage 1. So the first stage of conflict is the appearance of the condition. What are the causes or sources of conflict that create opportunities for the conflict to arise or to exist? So this condition normally need to lead directly to conflict, but one of them is necessary, is just happen within the surface. So they have certain behavior basically have intended to provoke the existence of conflict. Okay, so for example, maybe because of the communication, the structure, or because of the personal variable. Then we move to chapter 2 about the cognitions and personalization. So basically, if the condition in stage 1 negatively affects something or party care about, then they happen or they have possibility or potential for the oppositions or incompatibility become actualized, so they will move to the second stage. So what will happen in second stage? They have of the disagreement or refer to perceived conflict. It does not mean it is personalized, but they have felt conflict levels when the individual become emotionally involved, so that they have an experience of feeling anxiety, tension, frustrated, or the hostility. So by making the sense of proceedings of the event, employee will perceive conflict. Then they will recognize that the other party try to violate norms or culture or do something which is wrong. So that's why the process will relate to the elements of blaming, and they will feel naturally the negative stage of emotion surrounding by the conflict. So that is what happened in stage 2. Okay, so we move to stage 3, which refer to the elements of intention. So intention basically intervene between people perceptions and emotion, whether they are overt their behavior. So they have elements of decision, how they will act to a particular way, although they are decided to act in a certain way. So they have different kinds of attentions that do not always line up with what they are actually do. So they have different between attentions and the behavior that have been portrayed. So they have 5 conflict handling intention, which is competing, collaborating, compromise, avoiding, or they try to accommodate. Then we move to stage 4, which is referred to dynamic process of interaction. For examples, you make a demand on me, so I respond by arguing with you. Then you shout out at me, so I'll yell at you back, and so on. So that is the kinds of behavior on how you respond towards the conflict that happened. And finally, on whatever the reactions or action that have been interplay between one or two parties, so the conflict may create certain consequences. So this slide is actually explain the details on whatever that have been discussed by me throughout the figure that I've shared earlier. So you can see here, it also provide the elements, examples of communication. So what are the issues that may exist in the ideas of communications? What about the group structure or the personal variables that have the potentials of position that may lead to the existence of conflict? Then same goes to this slide. On the stage 2, cognitions and personalization, you may refer when you want to understand more on this stage. So normally the parties will try to make sense of conflict by defining it, and they will come to the potentials of solution. So when we are discussing about conflict, emotions will always play a major role in shaping the elements of perception. Then it goes to the stage 3. What are the intention? Okay, so it reflects the elements of decision to act in a given way. So the error that happen in your intention may cause high levels of conflict. So it also provide the 5 conflict on how to handle intention. So like I've said earlier, so you may refer competing, whether you want to collaborate, avoid, accommodate, or you will try to compromise. So this is the um, skeleton on the dynamic escalations of conflict. So the low levels are no conflict. It's clearly stated there, and then how it will increase the levels of the escalations of the conflict. So until the high levels will be overt effort to destroy the other party. So that is the final escalations in the conflict itself. Alright, so normally when we are discussing about the outcome or the consequences of the conflict, you need to bear in your mind that have certain conflict have been constructive, that it able to improve the quality of decision, sometimes stimulate creativity and also innovation, or may encourage the interest and the curiosities among the group members, so that they provide the medium for problem to be edge and tension able to release. And then they also reflect the ideas of self-evaluations, and they may change because of the conflict itself. So you can identify here they have two types of outcome, whether it may come out as the functional outcome and also may come out with the dysfunctional outcome. So you can see dysfunctional normally reflect to the negative effects of the consequences, where the group will be less effective, reduce cohesiveness and communication, lead to the barriers due to the conflict arise, and also may lead to the destructions of the group itself. What about the ideas of managing conflict? Okay, so managing conflict is exists when the situation that people can use resolution and stimulate technique to achieve the desire levels of conflict. So this is what we can call or known as the process conflict management. So in anticipating and managing conflict, organization can target three specific domain. For example, like what are the strategy, what are the functions, and also tackle the elements of workers. Then need to minimize the counterproductives of conflict, so that recognize when there really is a disagreement exists within the organization. For example, try to encourage open frank discussion, focus on the interests, so that everybody have their own opinions, so they have no disagreements on each other's. Have opposing group pick important issues and work for mutual satisfaction. So we will try to identify what are the best options that they have, and also try to emphasize what are the interests that can be shared within the members within the organization. However, they also have cultural influences. For example, like differences that exist across the country in conflict resolution strategy may be based on the collective versus individual. So they have one study suggests that top management team in Chinese high technology firm prefer collaboration even more than compromising and avoiding. So for them, that is the most effective way to solve the conflict. However, cross cultural negotiation can lead to the issues of trust. Then the elements of negotiation reflect to the elements of interaction for almost everyone within the groups and organization. So they have one process that occur when two or more parties decided on how to allocate scarce resources. So they have negotiation within one another, and they try to interact within one another and try to maintain their social relationship and try to behave in a correct way as the process of bargaining. Then we move to this slide, which shows the figures of on how distributive bargaining versus integrative bargaining. So normally, the negotiation strategy that you may engage is actually distributive bargaining. So means that both party believe that any gain is made at the other expenses, then you will try to negotiate having these reductions in resources and execute counter with an offer of how many percent that you want to get. Okay, so it also identify features that operate under zero sum condition, that in any gained is actually on your own expenses. So the essence of distributive bargaining is negotiation, whether who get what share or within the fixed pie. That is the example. So if you are related to the fixed pie, that means that you set amount of goods of services that to be divided within the group. So you can see throughout the figures that have been shared here, what are the bargaining characteristic and what is actually elements under distributive bargaining, and how if you apply as integrative bargaining. Okay, so you can may refer to this slide, and then you may identify what are the goals. So in terms of distributive bargaining, what they are trying to achieve, integrative bargaining, and also within the distributive bargaining. So motivation, if you are in line with the distributive bargaining, win-loss, and then integrative bargaining, you will win-win situation. Okay, so this is what we are discussing on. So this is actually on staking out the bargaining zone. Okay, so this is actually what we want to achieve. What is actually our goal, and then this is the levels of settlement range to fulfill what are the conflicts belong to, and what are the levels of bargaining settlement range between both party A and also party B. So that we call it as resistance point. So in integrative bargaining, win-win situation is only possible, but you need to know that both party must be open, both party must be very sensitive within one another, both party must be able to trust each others, and both party must be willingly to be flexible with any kinds of discussions, ideas that have been sharing within the times of bargaining happen. So this slide is provide a simplified models within the negotiation process. So it views that negotiations are comprised of 5 steps. First, prepare and planning, definitions of ground rule, clarifications, and also justification. Then start bargaining and problem solving. Then the final one will be closure and the elements of implementations on what the outcomes of negotiation that happen. Okay, now kita nak tengok apakah yang menyebabkan negotiation efektif ataupun tidak based on individual differences. So, ada banyak benda yang mempengaruhi, contohnya macam personality trait, kadang-kadang emosi, showing anger ataupun positive mood. Lebih baguslah bila kita nak involve dalam negotiation. Culture and races, so ada setengah-setengah culture yang kena kita noted quite sensitive ataupun reflect kepada gender. Ada juga yang berpendapat men are slightly better when they are dealing with negotiation. Okay, then ada juga yang kata stereotype that lower power position, low the levels of power position because of the gender. Maksudnya perempuan contohnya kan. So they will relook at the differences of the personal or individual differences to identify whether it can be effective or not. So what about social context? So ini adalah melibatkan the elements of reputation, the way people think and talk about you. Itu sangat-sangat mempengaruhi. So ada setengah-setengah orang dia agak firm ataupun agak apa we can say garang contohnya, dan the elements of trustworthiness ni juga sangat-sangat penting when they are discuss about the elements of reputation. So relationship, what is the best relationship as a whole, contohnya melibatkan employer dengan employee ataupun CEO dengan employee, for example, within the context of organisation, ataupun social contact between students and lecturer, between friend and apa tu, kita boleh katakan one group of friend to the other groups of friends, so it might be reflect and influence the elements of negotiation effectiveness. Okay, dalam negotiation, dia ada third party negotiation yang mana dia akan melibatkan what we can say three basic third party roles, which are mediator, arbitrator, conciliator. So kalau dalam third party negotiation ni, kalau mediator ni maksudnya dia adalah neutral third party who facilitate a negotiation solution, sama ada dia menggunakan reasoning, persuasion ataupun suggestion sebagai satu alternatif. Kalau arbitrator, dia adalah negotiation who has the authority to dictate an agreement. Okay. Dan kalau conciliator, trusted third party who provide an informal communication link between the negotiators and the opponent. So, tiga benda ni ataupun tiga elemen basic role ni ada dalam third role ataupun third party negotiation. So, mereka mempunyai peranan dan juga function yang berbeza. So as the manager, yang paling penting kita nak tengok apakah management style yang terbaik. Kita akan integrative solution untuk dilihat ataupun what the major important adalah try to build up the trust so the elements of conflict can be reduced. Consider to compromise within one another. If you are try to make a negotiation, try to compromise the needs of the others, the interests of the others also, and consider the trade-off between distributive and integrative bargaining. So antara distributive ataupun integrative bargaining kena tengok depends on the context of the negotiation. Yang mana yang lebih baik, whether you are actually focused on win-win situations or win and loss situation, it's depend on you. What the goals that you want to solve and what the goals are you want to achieve. So I think that's all for this chapter. Inshallah, we will move to the second chapter, which reflect to the chapter 15, Foundations of Organization Structure. Thank you everyone. Assalamualaikum.